January 23, 1943, 1430. In the underground Wolf's Lair bunker, 6 meters deep, the daily meeting of the Army High Command, OKH, takes place. Colonel General Kurt Zeitzler, Chief of the General Staff, holds a folder marked Nur für Offizier, for officers only. Around the long oak table sit men who, only a month earlier, were confident in German superiority. Colonel General Heinz Guderian, father of the German tank doctrine. Colonel General Erich von Manstein, the tactical genius behind the conquest of France. Colonel General Georg Hans Reinhardt, commander of a panzer group on the Eastern Front. Meine Herren, gentlemen, Zeitzler begins, opening the folder. Today we have received intelligence from America, which forces us to reconsider our assessment of enemy potential. The first page shows a photograph taken by a German agent in Detroit. The Chrysler tank arsenal, 40 hectares of production space under a single roof. In the picture, an endless assembly line of M4 Sherman tanks stretches toward the horizon. Das ist unmöglich. This is impossible. Guderian reacts first, taking the photograph. As the creator of Blitzkrieg, he understands better than anyone the meaning of mass tank production. Dieser Betrieb ist größer als alle unsere Panzerwerke zusammen. This plant is larger than all our tank factories combined. Zeitzler turns the page. A statistical table from the American War Production Board, December 1942. The numbers stun even these seasoned generals. Tank production, December 1942, 1,854 units. Planned output for 1943, 29,000 tanks. Number of active tank plants, 16 major factories. Total monthly capacity, 3,200 tanks. Von Manstein quickly does the math in his head. 29,000 tanks in 1 year, more than Germany had built in the entire war. Herr Zeitzler, sind Sie sicher, dass diese Zahlen stimmen? General Zeitzler, are you sure these numbers are correct? Abwehr bestätigt die Daten aus 3 unabhängigen Quellen. Abwehr has confirmed the data from 3 independent sources. Zeitzler replies. Indeed, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of military intelligence, personally verified the information through agents in neutral countries. But the true shock comes from comparison. According to Reich Minister of Armaments Albert Speer, Germany produced 4,098 tanks of all types in 1942. The Americans planned to build 7 times that amount. General Reinhardt, commander of the 41st Panzer Corps near Moscow, knows the cost of each lost tank. Wir verlieren täglich 30 Panzer an der Ostfront. We lose 30 tanks a day on the Eastern Front, he says. Bei dieser amerikanischen Produktion können Sie uns sehen nur Panzer für jeden verlorenen schicken. At that rate, they can replace everyone we lose with 10. The math was merciless. Germany strained to build 340 tanks a month, America 2,500. Adding British and Soviet production, the Allies enjoyed an 8-fold numerical advantage. February 2nd, 1943, Ministry of Armaments, Berlin. Albert Speer, the all-powerful architect of the Reich, sits in his Pariser Platz office studying a report that will forever change his understanding of the war. Scattered across his desk, photographs of American factories, statistical tables, production schematics. Speer is not a soldier, but a technocrat, a former architect who became coordinator of Germany's entire war industry. If anyone can grasp the scale of the American threat, it is him. And what he sees overturns everything he thought possible. His assistant, Dr. Karl Sauer, spreads aerial photographs across the desk. Das ist Willow Run, Michigan. This is Willow Run, Michigan, he explains. Der größte Betrieb der Welt unter einem Dach. The largest plant in the world under one roof. The photograph shows a building 1.6 kilometers long and 400 meters wide, one hall, larger than the entire Ruhr industrial complex. Unmöglich. Impossible, Speer whispers. Sie produzieren dort B-24 bomber. They build B-24 bombers there, Sauer continues. Ein Flugzeug pro Stunde. Wir 24 Bomber pro Tag. 1 aircraft per hour. 24 bombers per day. Speer does the math. 24 bombers per day. That's 8,760 per year from a single plant. The entire German aircraft industry produced 15,000 planes annually. One American factory made more than half of that alone. Und die Panzerproduktion? And tank production? Speer asks. Sauer opens the next folder, a detailed analysis of U.S. tank industry compiled by Technical Intelligence. The list is staggering. Chrysler Tank Arsenal, Detroit, 1,000 tanks per month. Lima Locomotive Works, Ohio, 500 per month. American Locomotive Company, 400 per month. Baldwin Locomotive Works, 300 per month. Federal Machine and Welder, 350 per month. Fisher Tank Arsenal, 800 per month. Plus dozens of smaller plants. Total capacity 4,000 tanks per month, 12 times German capability. Aber wir bauen bessere Panzer. But we build better tanks. Speer objects. Ein Tiger ist zwei Sherman wert. 1 Tiger is worth 2 Shermans. Sauer nods but points to the next table. Ja, aber sie können 20 Sherman für jeden Tiger bauen. Yes, but they can build 20 Shermans for each Tiger. Und sie brauchen 2 Monate für einen Sherman. Wir brauchen 6 Monate für einen Tiger. And they need 2 months for a Sherman. We need 6 months for a Tiger. The math was merciless. Even if German tanks were superior, the Americans countered with sheer volume, 10-fold, 15-fold, 20-fold superiority in numbers. February 8, 1943, 1600, Fuhr's Bunker, Rostenburg. Adolf Hitler sits at his desk, covered with maps, reports, and photographs. In front of him, Albert Speer and General Zeitzler, with a report on American industrial potential. By February 1943, Hitler was no longer the confident dictator who had launched the war against the Soviet Union 2 years earlier. The defeat at Stalingrad, the loss of Africa, and the growing bombardment of German cities had left their mark on his psyche. But acknowledging the scale of American superiority was something he categorically refused to do. Das sind Übertreibungen der feindlichen Propaganda. These are exaggerations of enemy propaganda. Hitler reacts to the American production figures. Die Amerikaner lügen, uns einzuschüchtern. The Americans lie to intimidate us. Speer spreads aerial reconnaissance photos across the desk, factory after factory, hall after hall, conveyor after conveyor. Mein Führer, das sind Luftaufnahmen unserer Agenten. My Führer, these are aerial photos from our agents, he insists. Diese Fabriken existieren wirklich. These factories really exist. Hitler picks up a photograph of the Chrysler plant, a building the size of a small city, a parking lot for 20,000 cars, more than in all of Berlin, railway lines entering directly into the factory halls. Das ist eine Fälschung. This is a forgery, he insists. Herr Speer, Hitler turns to his armaments minister. Wie viele Panzer können wir 1943 produzieren? How many tanks can we produce in 1943? Speer knows the number by heart. He works with it daily. BEI, Maximaler Anstrengung 5,000 Panzer. At maximum effort, 5,000 tanks. It was true. Even with all resources mobilized, Germany could not produce more than 5,000 tanks in a year. Und die Amerikaner behaupten, 30,000 zu schaffen? And the Americans claim they can build 30,000? Hitler asks sarcastically. Das ist physikalisch unmöglich. That is physically impossible. Zeitzler intervenes. Mein Führer, unsere Agenten, bestätigen diese Zahlen aus Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. My Führer, our agents confirm these numbers from Detroit, Pittsburgh, as Cleveland. Hitler spins around sharply. Unsere Agenten sind Trottel. Our agents are fools. Sie werden von jüdischen Bankiers getäuscht. They are being deceived by Jewish bankers. Jewish bankers, the Führer's favorite explanation for every unpleasant fact. If something did not fit his worldview, it had to be the work of Jewish conspirators. But the reality of American factories had nothing to do with anti-Semitic fantasies. The meeting ends with Hitler's ultimatum: Ich will keine amerikanischen Märchen mehr hören. I don't want to hear any more American fairy tales. Konzentrieren Sie sich auf unsere Produktion. Focus on our own production. But facts did not bend to the dictator's will. While Hitler denied American numbers, U.S. factories worked around the clock. Every hour brought new tanks, aircraft, and artillery, an industrial avalanche soon to bury the Third Reich. March 15, 1943, Hamburg, Abwehr Headquarters. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of German military intelligence, plans one of the most important operations of the war, the verification of American production data. The mission is codenamed Bernhard, after the legendary counterfeiter. Summoned to his office are SS Obersturmbannführer Otto Skorzeny, specialist in sabotage, and Colonel Erwin Lahausen, head of technical intelligence. Their task, by any means, obtain precise data on the American tank industry. Meine Herren, gentlemen, Canaris begins spreading a map of the U.S. with key industrial centers marked. The Führer believes our data is exaggerated. We must prove or disprove these numbers. Skorzeny studies the map. Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Toledo, the heart of American industry. Wie viele Agenten haben wir dort? How many agents do we have there? He asks. 12 in Detroit, 6 in Pittsburgh, 4 in Cleveland. 12 in Detroit, 6 in Pittsburgh, 4 in Cleveland. Lahausen replies. 22 agents to assess the industrial capacity of an entire country. Pathetically few, but all they had. Canaris outlines the mission. Wir brauchen Fotos, Produktionszahlen, Arbeitsschichtpläne. Alles was die tatsächliche Kapazität beweist. We need photographs, production figures, shift schedules, anything that proves actual capacity. The operation begins in April 1943. Agent Max, real name Franz Gärtner, a German émigré who had returned to the U.S., in 1938 gets a job as a worker at the Chrysler plant in Detroit. His task: photograph the assembly lines from the inside. The first images, transmitted by radio through Mexico, stun even the veteran intelligence officers. A hall 800 meters long, filled with tanks in every stage of assembly. Das ist kein Betrieb. Das ist eine Stadt. This is not a factory. This is a city, Gärtner telegraphs. Agent Adler, Hans Müller, former BMW engineer, works in Toledo at the Willys Overland plant building Jeeps. His reports are even more shocking. Sie bauen 400 Jeeps pro Tag. Mit nur 800 Arbeitern. They build 400 Jeeps a day, with only 800 workers. 400 Jeeps per day with 800 workers meant astonishing productivity. In Germany, producing 50 cars per day required 1,200 workers. American automation and assembly line methods gave a six-fold advantage in efficiency. The most valuable data comes from Agent Wolf, Dr. Kurt Richter, a metallurgist from Aachen University. He becomes a consultant at a steel plant in Pittsburgh, gaining access to production statistics. His report of May 15, 1943, explodes like a bomb at German headquarters. Die USA produzieren 80 Millionen Tonnen Stahl pro Jahr. Deutschland, 20 Millionen. The US produces 80 million tons of steel per year. Germany, 20 million. A 4-to-1 steel advantage meant a 4-to-1 advantage in everything built from steel tanks, planes, ships, artillery. Without a massive steel base, modern war was impossible. But the most shocking report comes from Agent Fuchs, Walter Stein, an aviation engineer from Messerschmitt. He infiltrates Willow Run in Michigan, where B-24 bombers are assembled. Ich habe gesehen, wie sie einen Bomber in 63 Minuten bauen. I saw them build a bomber in 63 minutes. He telegraphs to Berlin. Das ist keine Produktion. Das ist Zauberei. This is not production. This is sorcery. 63 minutes for a 4-engine bomber. In Germany, assembling a Ju-88 took 2 to 3 weeks. The Americans did the same in an hour. The technological gap was staggering. May 1943. Berlin, Technical Institute of German War Industry. A group of Germany's best engineers and economists analyzes the data obtained from agents in the United States. The team is led by Professor Dr. Ferdinand Porsche, creator of German tanks, and Dr. Willy Messerschmitt, designer of German aircraft. On the conference table lie photographs, diagrams, tables. Each document is another blow to German self-confidence. Professor Porsche holds a photograph of a tank assembly line in Detroit. Meine Herren, gentlemen, he addresses his colleagues. Was wir hier sehen, revolutioniert den Panzerbau. What we see here revolutionizes tank construction. The photograph shows a line of 47 workstations, with 47 M4 Shermans being assembled simultaneously. Dr. Messerschmitt studies the layout of the Willow Run plant. Ein Gebäude, 1,600 Meter lang. One building, 1,600 meters long, he mutters. Größer als 3 unserer Flugzeugwerke zusammen. Larger than 3 of our aircraft factories combined. But what shocks the experts most is not the size of the factories, but the organization of production. German engineers were used to an individual approach each tank, each aircraft assembled almost like a unique piece. The Americans applied the principles of mass production. Dr. Günther Imes, an economist from Munich University, analyzes labor productivity figures. Sie brauchen 500 Arbeitsstunden für einen Sherman. Wir brauchen 3000 für einen Panzer IV. They need 500 man-hours for a Sherman. We need 3,000 for a Panzer IV. A 6-fold difference in productivity. Even if German tanks were technically better, the Americans compensated with speed. While Germans built 1 Panzer, the Americans built 6 Shermans. Professor Porsche tries to find weaknesses, aber die Qualität. But the quality. He examines photographs of American tanks, simpler design, fewer parts, standardized components. Sie opfern Perfektion für Geschwindigkeit. They sacrifice perfection for speed. It was true. German engineers strove for technical perfection. Each Tiger tank was a masterpiece of engineering. But building one took 3 times the time and resources of an American Sherman. Dr. Messerschmitt delivers a conclusion that stuns the entire commission. Wenn diese Zahlen stimmen, haben wir den Krieg bereits verloren. Nicht auf dem Schlachtfeld, sondern in der Fabrik. If these numbers are correct, we have already lost the war. Not on the battlefield, but in the factory. The math was merciless. German tank production, 400 units per month. American tank production, 2,500 units per month. Ratio, 1 to 6.25. Even if each German tank destroyed 3 American ones, the United States would still enjoy a 2-to-1 numerical advantage. And with British and Soviet production added, the Allied advantage grew to 10-to-1. Professor Porsche drafts the final report. Die amerikanische Industrie hat eine neue Art der Kriegführung geschaffen. Sie kämpfen nicht mit Soldaten, sondern mit Fabriken. American industry has created a new type of warfare. They fight not with soldiers, but with factories. June 1st, 1943. Reich Chancellery, Berlin. Albert Speer presents Hitler with the Commission's report on American industry. 127 pages of facts, figures, and photographs. The most comprehensive analysis of enemy potential produced during the war. But the Führer is skeptical before the presentation even begins. Herr Speer, Hitler interrupts by the 3rd page. Das sind alles Übertreibungen. This is all exaggeration. Die Amerikaner wollen uns Angst machen. The Americans want to frighten us. Speer spreads aerial photos of US factories across the table. Mein Führer, das sind Aufnahmen unserer besten Piloten. My Führer, these are photos from our best pilots, he insists. Diese Fabriken existieren wirklich. These factories really exist. But Hitler refuses to look. Film tricks, camera tricks, he shouts. Hollywood propaganda. For the Führer, to admit American superiority would be to admit his own misjudgment of the enemy. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, present at the meeting, supports Hitler. Mein Führer hat recht. My Führer is right. Deutsche Qualität ist wichtiger als Quantität. German quality is more important than quantity. As head of the Luftwaffe, Göring in particular did not want to concede American air superiority. The meeting ends with Hitler's ultimatum. Ich will kein amerikanischen Märchen mehr hören. I don't want to hear any more American fairy tales. Konzentrieren Sie sich auf unsere Produktion. Focus on our own production. July 1943. Chrysler Tank Arsenal, Detroit, Michigan. 0700. The start of the day shift. 15,000 workers arrive in their own cars, a sight unimaginable in wartime Germany, where even engineers traveled on foot or by bicycle. The factory's parking lot covers 12 hectares, the size of a medium German town. Chevrolets, Fords, Plymouths, Buicks, tens of thousands of privately owned cars belonging to American workers. Each of them lives better than the average German engineer. The main plant is a single-story building, 800 meters long and 400 meters wide. Under one roof are all facilities needed for tank production: foundry, machine shops, assembly lines, and warehouses for finished vehicles. Total floor space, 32 hectares. John McCormick, production director, begins his day with a tour of the halls. A 52-year-old engineer from the University of Michigan, he joined Chrysler in 1925 and rose from shop floor technologist to head of the world's largest tank factory. Morning, boys, he greets the section foreman. The atmosphere here is utterly unlike Germany. No drill, no political officers, no fear. People work not from coercion but conviction. They believe they are fighting for their country, their freedom, their way of life. First stop, the foundry. 24 open hearth furnaces run around the clock, producing 800 tons of steel per day. For comparison, the entire Ruhr Basin in Germany produced 1,200 tons daily. One American plant alone made 2/3 of that output. How many hulls today? McCormick asks Mike O'Brien, the Irish foreman. 47 this morning, boss, O'Brien replies. 47 tank hulls in half a day, more than Germany produced in an entire week. Next stop, the machine shop. 200 machine tools operate with German precision but American speed. Each is manned by a single worker. Automation minimizes manpower needs. But the true miracle lies in the assembly line. A 600-meter conveyor where 47 M4 Shermans are assembled simultaneously. Every 85 minutes, a fully armed, fueled, and combat-ready tank rolls off the line. McCormick checks his watch. 11:30. Let's see number 3847, he says. Tank serial number 3847 is the 3847th, built in 1943. In 7 months, the factory has produced nearly 4,000 tanks. At the final station, Foreman Jim Collins, a World War I veteran, inspects the controls. All systems green, boss, he reports. 10 minutes later, the Sherman drives itself out toward the rail ramp. How many tomorrow? McCormick asks. 17 on the morning shift, 16 on the evening, Collins answers. 33 tanks in a single day, from one plant, more than Germany produced in a week. But Chrysler was only one of 16 major U.S. tank plants. General Motors in Flint built 25 tanks per day. American Locomotive in Schenectady, 18 per day. Baldwin Locomotive in Philadelphia, 12 per day. Combined national capacity, about 100 tanks daily. August 1943. Fisher Tank Arsenal, Grand Blanc, Michigan. Engineer Walter Reuther of General Motors demonstrates to military inspectors the revolutionary methods that transformed tank building from craft into industry. Gentlemen, he tells Colonel James Lewis of the Ordnance Department and British Major Douglas Barker, "Today you'll see how we build tanks like automobiles." First principle: standardization. Every M4 component is built to exact specifications, interchangeable with parts from any other factory. A turret cast in Detroit fits perfectly onto a hull from Ohio. In Germany, each tank is unique, Reuther explains. Our tanks are identical. Any part fits any tank. This simplifies production, repair, and logistics. Second principle: division of labor. Instead of master craftsmen assembling an entire tank, each worker performs one operation: installing the engine, mounting the turret, wiring the electrics. Specialization speeds both work and quality. Worker Frank Novak from Detroit has been installing transmissions for 2 years. He now completes the task in 12 minutes. In Germany, the same job took 3 to 4 hours. "I can do it blindfolded," Novak jokes. It's not far from the truth. Standardization and repetition create near-automatic mastery. Third principle: flow production. The tank moves, the workers stand still, and the opposite of German practice, where the tank stayed in place and workers circled it with tools. Major Barker notes the conveyor speed, 2 feet per minute. At that pace, a tank traverses the 600-meter line in 85 minutes, astonishing by European standards. Fourth principle: vertical integration. Fisher does not just assemble tanks, it produces most of its own components. Steel smelted on site, parts machined in-house, painting and final tests under one roof. From iron ore to finished tank in 72 hours, Reuther declares. In Germany, the same cycle took 2 to 3 months. Fifth principle: quality control. Inspectors check standards at every stage. Defective parts are pulled and replaced within minutes. Robert Davis, a GM veteran, inspects weld seams. "This joint is not good enough," he says, sending a hull back for rework. Sixth principle: continuous operation. The plant runs 3 shifts, 24/7. As one shift leaves, another begins. The conveyor never stops. "We built 847 tanks last month," Reuther concludes. 847 tanks in 31 days, more than Rommel's entire armored force in Africa. September 1943. Willow Run, Michigan, the largest aircraft factory in the world. Lunchtime. 42,000 workers eat simultaneously in 12 cafeterias spread across the immense complex. Mike Kowalski, a welder of Polish origin from Chicago, sits beside African-American Sam Johnson from Alabama and Maria Rodriguez, a Mexican from Texas. The racial and ethnic diversity of the American workforce shocks the German POWs working at the same plant. "How many planes today?" Kowalski asks Johnson, a foreman on the assembly line. 23 so far, Johnson replies. "We might hit 25 by evening." 25 4-engine B-24 Liberators in a single day, more than the entire German aircraft industry produced in a week. And this was just a normal shift, without strain or emergency pressure. At the next table sits Rose Miller, a 28-year-old housewife from Ohio who, 2 years earlier, had never handled a tool more complex than a kitchen knife. Now she rivets bomber fuselages with the precision of an experienced aircraft builder. "My husband is in the Pacific," she tells German POW Hans Müller, who works nearby. "I build planes to bring him home faster." The motivation of American workers astonishes the German prisoners. This is not fear of punishment as in the Reich. It is personal commitment to victory. Each worker understands that their effort shortens the war and brings loved ones home sooner. James O'Connor, a 19-year-old from an Irish family in Boston, failed the draft medical due to asthma. Now he compensates by working 10 to 12 hours a day instead of the required 8. "I can't fight, but I can build," he says. In a year, O'Connor has contributed to the production of 340 bombers, a contribution no less vital than combat. What shocks the Germans most is the role of women. In the Reich, women were confined to simple tasks: cleaning, sorting, packaging. Here, women operate heavy machinery, weld, and perform precision assembly. Betty Davis, a 34-year-old mother of 3 from Detroit, leads a team of 12 workers installing aircraft engines. Under her command are men with 10 to 20 years of engineering experience. "She's better than most men," admits Frank Thompson, a 45-year-old mechanic with 2 decades on the job. "Knows every bolt, every wire." For German POWs raised on Kinder, Küche, Kirche, children, kitchen, church, the competence of American women is a cultural shock. Not only do they work, they lead, decide, and take responsibility. Equally shocking is racial integration. African Americans work beside whites, often in identical positions for equal pay. This runs directly against Nazi ideology of racial superiority. Sam Johnson earns $62 per week, more than a German engineer before the war. He owns a car, rents an apartment with electricity and running water, and his children attend the same school as white children. The atmosphere surprises the Germans most of all. No fear, no tension. People joke while working, listen to music on radios, discuss the news. The workday lasts 8 hours, after which they go home to their families. In Germany, workers labored 12 to 14 hours under threat of criminal punishment for absenteeism. They work harder in 8 hours than we in 12, realizes Oberleutnant Hans Müller, a former Junkers engineer. Because they want to work, not forced to. July 5, 1943, 0430, the Kursk Salient, Operation Citadel, Germany's last attempt to turn the tide on the Eastern Front. 2,700 German tanks against 5,000 Soviet ones, but among the Soviet machines, more and more bear the stamp "Made in USA." General of Panzer Troops Walter Model, commander of the 9th Army, personally observes his armored units attack from a command post near Okhovatka. Through his field binoculars, he watches his Tigers and Panthers clash with Soviet armor. "Was ist das für ein Panzer? What kind of tank is that?" Model asks Lieutenant Colonel Franz Becke, liaison officer from the 2nd SS Panzer Corps. Becke raises his binoculars. A group of 12 unfamiliar silhouettes advances against German positions. "Das sind Sherman, Herr General," Becke replies. "Amerikanische Panzer." Indeed, the first M4 Shermans delivered to the USSR under Lend-Lease appear at Kursk with the 233rd Tank Brigade. Model studies the battle. The Shermans are inferior in armor and firepower, but they are noticeably more numerous. For every Tiger, there are 3 or 4 Shermans. "Sie kämpfen mit Zahlen, nicht mit Qualität." They fight with numbers, not with quality, the general mutters. But the real shock for German command is not the small number of American tanks at Kursk. It is the realization that the US can supply equipment to the USSR while simultaneously preparing for landings in Italy. Colonel Hyacinth Graf Strachwitz, the legendary Panzer ace and commander of the Großdeutschland Tank Regiment, writes in his July 8 report, "Der Feind hat unbegrenzte Reserven. For jeden zerstörten Sherman kommen zwei neue." The enemy has unlimited reserves. For every destroyed Sherman, 2 more arrive. It was true. The USSR received 400 to 500 American tanks per month through Lend-Lease. Losses were swiftly replaced. German armored divisions had no such reserves. On July 15th, in the battle's final phase, Army Group Center receives an intelligence report that stuns even veteran staff officers. Soviet forces launch an attack near Orel with 200 M4 Shermans at once. 200 American tanks in a single battle. That was more than Guderian's entire 2nd Panzer Army fielded at the start of Operation Barbarossa, and this was only part of U.S. deliveries to the USSR. The bulk of American forces were preparing for combat in Western Europe. On July 20th, General Heinz Guderian, reinstated as Inspector General of Panzer Troops, visits the front near Kursk. He examines knocked-out American tanks, studies their design, and questions captured crews. Diese Panzer sind einfach, aber zuverlässig. These tanks are simple, but reliable, he writes in his field diary. Sie haben weniger Panzerung als unsere, aber sie fahren nie mehr. They have less armor than ours, but they always run. The simplicity of American tanks surprises German engineers. The Sherman has half as many parts as the Panther, fewer components to break, easier to repair, cheaper to build. Wir bauen Kunstwerke, sie bauen Werkzeuge. We build works of art. They build tools. Guderian realizes German tanks were masterpieces of engineering. American tanks were efficient weapons. In war, efficiency mattered more than perfection. August 1943. Abwehr Headquarters, Berlin. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris receives the most comprehensive intelligence report yet on American industry. 200 pages of facts that shatter the last illusions of German command about any chance of victory. The report, based on data from 34 agents working in U.S. factories for 6 months, cross-checks every figure from multiple sources. Each fact is backed by photographs or documents. Section 1. U.S. Tank Industry. Number of tank factories: 16 large, 47 medium. Monthly capacity: 3,200 tanks as of August 1943. Planned increase by year's end: 4,000 tanks per month. Production time for one M4 Sherman: 6 to 8 hours of actual labor. Total workforce: 340,000. Average tank worker's wage: $45 per week. Canaris reads the numbers twice, making sure it isn't an error. 4,000 tanks per month, more than Germany built in all of 1942. And this was only tanks. Not aircraft, not ships, not artillery. Section 2. Aviation Industry. Number of aircraft plants: 67 large. Monthly aircraft output: 7,300, August 1943. Projected by year's end: 9,000 per month. Largest plant: Willow Run, 1,600 meters long. Assembly time for one B-24 bomber: 63 minutes. 63 minutes for a 4-engine bomber. In the Luftwaffe, assembling a Ju-88 took 2 to 3 weeks. The technological gap was catastrophic. Section 3. Steel Industry. Annual U.S. steel production: 81 million tons, 1943. German production: 34 million tons. Ratio: 2.4 to 1 in America's favor. Number of open hearth furnaces: 1,847 versus 312 in Germany. Productivity per furnace: 1.8 times higher in the U.S. Canaris calculates, even if Germany seized all Soviet industry, it could not reach America's steel output. The U.S. industrial base was simply in another league. Most shocking section: logistics and transport. Freight cars: 2.3 million versus Germany's 685,000. Railroad length: 400,000 kilometers versus 68,000 kilometers. Trucks: 5.2 million versus 300,000. Port capacity: 120 million tons annually. These numbers explain how the U.S. could fight in the Pacific, supply the USSR, prepare for invasion of Europe, and still expand production. They had the transport capacity to support every theater simultaneously. Canaris summons Colonel Erwin Lahausen. "Read this and tell me our agents are mistaken." Lahausen spends 2 hours with the report, then looks up. "Herr Admiral die Zahlen sind korrekt. Wir haben den Krieg bereits verloren. Admiral, the numbers are correct. We have already lost this war. October 1943, Ministry of Armaments, Berlin. Albert Speer drafts the Totaler Krieg, Total War, program, a plan for total mobilization of German industry to compete with America. The program is ambitious, but rooted in illusions about Germany's actual capabilities. The target: increase tank production to 1,000 units per month by the end of 1944, triple the current output. On paper, it seemed achievable. In reality, the numbers were merciless. Meine Herren, gentlemen, Speer addresses the board of directors from Krupp, Thyssen, and Rheinmetall. We must triple our production within a year. This is a matter of the Reich survival. Gustav Krupp von Bohlen, patriarch of the Steel dynasty, shakes his head. Herr Minister, wo sollen wir das Metall hernehmen? Minister, where are we supposed to get the metal? Indeed, Germany was already exploiting every accessible source of raw material. Speer spreads out maps of the occupied territories: Frankreich, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, France, Belgium, Czechoslovakia. We will transport their equipment into Germany. The plan looked logical on paper but collapsed in practice. Transport, moving factory machinery from France to Germany, required thousands of freight cars, but those same cars were needed to supply the front, evacuate the wounded, and deliver food to cities. Labor. Even with equipment, Germany lacked skilled workers. Millions of men were at the front. Women were only reluctantly employed due to ideological prejudice. Foreign laborers lacked training. Raw materials. Swedish iron ore shipments were irregular, constantly threatened by Allied submarines. Romanian oil was under threat from the Soviet advance. Czech factories ran at 40% capacity due to sabotage. The most ambitious element of the program: construction of a new tank plant in Magdeburg. Planned output: 500 tanks per month. Size: half that of America's Chrysler tank arsenal. Completion time: 18 months. Engineer Ferdinand Porsche personally visits the site in December 1943. What he sees disillusions even him. Sie haben in 6 Monaten geschafft, was die Amerikaner in 6 Wochen machen. In 6 months, you've done what the Americans accomplish in 6 weeks. Construction progress was catastrophically slow. Cement, steel, and skilled builders were in short supply. Allied bombers repeatedly struck the construction sites. By May 1945, the plant was still unfinished. By the end of 1943, it was clear the Totaler Krieg program had failed. Instead of 1,000 tanks per month, Germany produced only 450. Instead of closing the gap with America, they were falling ever further behind. June 6, 1944, 0530, Normandy coast. The largest amphibious operation in human history unfolds before the stunned eyes of the German defenders of the Atlantic Wall. What they witness shatters their remaining illusions about American capabilities. Lieutenant General Dietrich Kress, commander of the 352nd Infantry Division, observes the landings from his command post near Vierville. Through a powerful Zeiss binocular, he sees a sight that feels like a hallucination. 5,000 landing ships of every type fill the horizon from Cape Barfleur to Isigny. Das ist unmöglich. This is impossible, he whispers to his adjutant. So viele Schiffe gibt es nicht auf der Welt. There cannot be this many ships in the entire world. And yet this is only the beginning of the shock. At 0600, the landing of armor begins. From the bows of LST's landing ship tank, DD amphibious Shermans roll directly into the water. 32 tanks from a single ship. Within hours, hundreds of machines are ashore. Major Helmut Meyer, commander of a battalion of the 21st Panzer Division, counts enemy vehicles: 100, 200, 300 Panzer, 100, 200, 300 tanks. By noon, he tallies over 600 American tanks on the Omaha and Utah beaches. 600 tanks in 6 hours of landings. That was more than the entire Panzer Group West had available to defend the French coast. And this was only day one. Each hour brought more ships with more tanks. When the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, under SS Brigadeführer Kurt Meyer, counterattacks Canadian positions near Caen with 80 Panthers and Tigers, the expectation is that German quality will triumph. Instead, they meet 4 to 5 Allied tanks for every German one. Sie kämpfen mit Zahlen. They fight with numbers. Meyer notes bitterly in his diary. Für jeden zerstörten Feindpanzer kommen zwei neue. For every destroyed enemy tank, 2 new ones appear. By evening, Hitlerjugend has lost 35 tanks. The Canadians have lost 67. But by dawn the next day, every Canadian loss is replaced by fresh tanks off the ships. The German losses remain permanent. General der Panzertruppe Leo Gehr von Schweppenberg, commander of Panzer Group West, cables Berlin on June 8 in desperation. Der Feind hat unbegrenzte Panzerreserven. Jeder Tag bringt neue amerikanische Divisionen. The enemy has unlimited tank reserves. Each day brings new American divisions. The truth is inescapable. Operation Overlord calls for 39 divisions to be landed within 2 months, each fully equipped with tanks, artillery, and trucks. A logistical miracle on a scale never before seen. Most shocking to German officers is the speed of American logistics. Within 2 weeks, the Allies construct 2 artificial Mulberry harbors, fully functional ports, capable of unloading 7,000 tons of supplies per day each. Sie haben einen Hafen über den Ärmelkanal transportiert. They transported an entire port across the English Channel, writes Colonel Anton Stauffenberg, in awe. Das ist Ingenieurskunst, die wir nicht verstehen. This is engineering we do not comprehend. June 6, 1944, 0530, Normandy coast. The largest amphibious operation in human history unfolds before the stunned eyes of the German defenders of the Atlantic Wall. What they witness shatters their remaining illusions about American capabilities. Lieutenant General Dietrich Kress, commander of the 352nd Infantry Division, observes the landings from his command post near Vierville. Through a powerful Zeiss binocular, he sees a sight that feels like a hallucination. 5,000 landing ships of every type fill the horizon from Cape Barfleur to Isigny. Das ist unmöglich. This is impossible, he whispers to his adjutant. So viele Schiffe gibt es nicht auf der Welt. There cannot be this many ships in the entire world. And yet this is only the beginning of the shock. At 0600, the landing of armor begins. From the bows of LST's landing ship tank, DD amphibious Shermans roll directly into the water. 32 tanks from a single ship. Within hours, hundreds of machines are ashore. Major Helmut Meyer, commander of a battalion of the 21st Panzer Division, counts enemy vehicles. 100, 200, 300 Panzer, 100, 200, 300 tanks. By noon, he tallies over 600 American tanks on the Omaha and Utah beaches. 600 tanks in 6 hours of landings. That was more than the entire Panzer Group West had available to defend the French coast. And this was only day one. Each hour brought more ships with more tanks. When the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, under SS Brigadeführer Kurt Meyer, counterattacks Canadian positions near Caen with 80 Panthers and Tigers, the expectation is that German quality will triumph. Instead, they meet 4 to 5 Allied tanks for every German one. Sie kämpfen mit Zahlen. They fight with numbers. Meyer notes bitterly in his diary. Für jeden zerstörten Feindpanzer kommen zwei neue. For every destroyed enemy tank, 2 new ones appear. By evening, Hitlerjugend has lost 35 tanks. The Canadians have lost 67. But by dawn the next day, every Canadian loss is replaced by fresh tanks off the ships. The German losses remain permanent. General der Panzertruppe Leo Gehr von Schweppenberg, commander of Panzer Group West, cables Berlin on June 8 in desperation. Der Feind hat unbegrenzte Panzerreserven. Jeder Tag bringt neue amerikanische Divisionen. The enemy has unlimited tank reserves. Each day brings new American divisions. The truth is inescapable. Operation Overlord calls for 39 divisions to be landed within 2 months, each fully equipped with tanks, artillery, and trucks. A logistical miracle on a scale never before seen. Most shocking to German officers is the speed of American logistics. Within 2 weeks, the Allies construct 2 artificial Mulberry harbors fully functional ports, capable of unloading 7,000 tons of supplies per day each. Sie haben einen Hafen über den Ärmelkanal transportiert. They transported an entire port across the English Channel, writes Colonel Anton Stauffenberg, in awe. Das ist Ingenieurskunst, die wir nicht verstehen. This is engineering we do not comprehend. September 1944. Führer Headquarters Wolfschlucht, East Prussia. Reports from front commanders arrive on Hitler's desk, detailing the state of Germany's armored forces. Every number is another nail in the coffin of the Third Reich. General Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of the Panzer Troops, delivers the figures. Mein Führer, wir haben noch 1200 einsatzfähige Panzer and allen Fronten. My Führer, we have only 1,200 operational tanks left on all fronts. Die Amerikaner haben mehr als 5,000 nur in Westeuropa. The Americans have more than 5,000 in Western Europe alone. Hitler refuses to believe it. Das sind Übertreibungen. These are exaggerations. But Guderian insists, spreading aerial photographs across the table. Das sind Aufnahmen unserer Aufklärer. These are reconnaissance photos from our own scouts. The photographs show endless rows of M4 Shermans, parked in formation at French airfields converted into tank depots. Ein Flugplatz voller Panzer, an airfield full of tanks, Hitler mutters. Never before has he seen such a concentration of armor. Colonel General Joseph Harpe, commander of Army Group North, reports on the Eastern Front. Saujets erhalten täglich amerikanisch Panzer. The Soviets are receiving American tanks every day. Lend-Lease macht sie stärker. Lend-Lease makes them stronger. German intelligence estimates that the USSR has received more than 7,000 American tanks through Lend-Lease on top of its own production of around 15,000 per year. In total, Soviet armored strength has tripled since the beginning of the war. The most painful reports come from Italy. Colonel General Heinrich von Vietinghoff, commander of the 10th Army, warns, Allierte Luftwaffe zerstört unser Panzer schneller, als wir sie reparieren können. The Allied Air Force destroys our tanks faster than we can repair them. Indeed, American tactical air power has become the deadliest threat to German armor. P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs, armed with rockets, hunt down lone German tanks. Air losses now exceed those from tank-on-tank combat. Warum haben wir keine solche Flugzeuge? Why don't we have planes like that? Hitler demands. The answer is painful. German industry produces 800 fighters per month. American factories turn out 2,500, plus the British, plus the Soviets. Albert Speer submits a final report on Germany's industrial output. Wir produzieren 300 Panzer pro Monat. We are producing 300 tanks per month. America, Sowjetunion und Großbritannien zusammen, 8,000. America, the Soviet Union, and Great Britain together, 8,000. A ratio of 27-1 against Germany. Even if each German tank were twice as effective as its Allied counterpart, the numerical advantage remains catastrophic. The war has become a contest of industrial capacity, a contest Germany lost before it even began. May 1945, a POW camp near Remagen. Senior German officers, now in American custody, are for the first time able to openly discuss the reasons for their defeat. The conversations are carefully monitored by U.S. intelligence officers, who collect material for post-war analysis. General Heinz Guderian sits in the camp library, reading American journals on war production. The numbers, once dismissed as propaganda, are now officially confirmed. United States, 88,410 tanks produced. Soviet Union, 105,251 tanks, including Lend-Lease from the U.S. Great Britain, 27,896 tanks. Total Allies, 221,557 tanks. Germany, by comparison, produced 49,777 tanks of all types, a ratio of 4.5 to 1 against the Reich. Wir kämpften gegen eine Industriekoalition, Guderian writes in his camp diary. We fought against an industrial coalition. Nicht gegen Armeen, sondern gegen Fabriken. Not against armies, but against factories. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, long regarded as Germany's tactical genius, tells U.S. interviewer Major Kenneth Strong, We unterschätzten nicht die amerikanische Armee. We unterschätzten die amerikanische Industrie. We did not underestimate the American army. We underestimated American industry. The generals had prepared to fight a peacetime American force of 200,000 men, with limited experience. They had not accounted for the ability of U.S. industry to equip and mobilize millions of soldiers in just 2 years. General Leo Gehr von Schweppenberg later wrote in his memoirs, Unser Panzer waren besser, aber sie hatten zehnmal mehr. Our tanks were better, but they had 10 times as many. The Tiger versus Sherman debate became a favorite among German tankers. In one-on-one combat, the Tiger often prevailed. But the Americans rarely fought that way. They attacked in groups of 5 or 10, coordinated with air support, and struck from the flanks. Lieutenant General Fritz Berlein, former commander of the Panzer-Lehr Division, admitted, Sie kämpften mit dem Kopf, nicht mit dem Herzen. They fought with their heads, not with their hearts. The bitterest realization was the futility of German efforts. Even if Germany had doubled its tank production, it would not have mattered. The Americans could have tripled theirs in response without straining their economy. Das war kein Krieg, Manstein concluded. This was not war. Das war Selbstmord. This was suicide.